namely, Mr Acting President, that this Council calls on the Australian Prime Minister, the Hon Anthony Albanese MP, to apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan, Sanae Takaichi, for his references to the gift of a Shizuoka Crown Melon following his comments and gestures on the Bush Deep podcast. Mr President, as we all know, the Prime Minister of Japan, Sanae Takaichi, met, and I apologise if I haven't pronounced her name correctly, met with Prime Minister the Hon Anthony Albanese in May this year in Canberra. The Australian Prime Minister was presented with a Shizuoka Crown Melon, a renowned gift of respect from Japan. It is commonly grown in that prefecture, and its distinctive feature is that it is its cultivation method. Growers allow only one melon to mature on each vine, producing an exceptionally high-quality fruit. This symbolic gift was used by the Prime Minister of Australia as an opportunity for a joke on his now infamous appearance on Nikki Osborne's podcast Bush Deep, which was filmed at the Lodge, no less, in June and then released in early July. During this interview, Mr Albanese participated in a shag, marry, date segment about Kylie Minogue, Nicole Kidman and Rhonda Birchmore. After being pressed, he answered Kylie clearly and later said all of the above when asked if he would marry, date and shag Kylie Minogue. He also made a number of comments about intimate relations with his wife. And I have to say, if he made such vulgar comments in front of his mates, I would hope that they would call him out. As it turns out, all of this is available on the World Wide Web for the whole world to see. Notably, Mr Albanese has apologised unequivocally for the comments concerning Kylie Minogue, Australia's beloved pop princess. Not so for the Japanese Prime Minister. The Australian Prime Minister has rejected the suggestion that the exchange carried sexual innuendo and has refused to apologise. His female senior Labor colleagues have also doubled down, providing him with a human shield to criticism. Many people are questioning the Prime Minister's decision to even participate in such a podcast. At the very least, he could have politely declined to answer the questions for which he has now apologised. But the melon references were entirely initiated by himself, and the exchange goes thus. Osborne asks the Prime Minister about the most crap gift he had received while travelling overseas. Mr Albanese offered that a recent gift from the Japanese Prime Minister was, quote unquote, pretty strange but ended up being quite good, unquote, a melon. Osborne then asked how the Japanese Prime Minister had got the melon through Australian customs, jokingly asking whether she had smuggled it while making a breast-related gesture. Mr Albanese replied, "I don't know, I got a couple of melons," holding his hands cupped in front of his chest. Osborne then made a Pamela Anderson comparison, so she gets the joke. She just came in looking like Pamela Anderson, unquote. Albanese responded, "She brought two, and they're beautiful." Both in interviews and in question time, Prime Minister Albanese has rejected the assertion that there was any innuendo. What have senior Labor women said? Labor's Minister for Women, Katie Gallagher, said that his comments have been misinterpreted. Labor Minister Tanya Plibersek has said it is 100% wrong. Labor Minister Claire O'Neill characterises the Prime Minister's critics as having absolutely lost the plot. Other female Labor ministers, as a list, defending their leader include Julie Collins, Catherine King, Amanda Rishworth, who calls it mischaracterisations, Madeleine King calls it sensationalising, South Australia's Penny Wong is blaming the coalition, including confecting a diplomatic issue. And a slight footnote here that the aforementioned Labor ministers include some of the infamous Mean Girls who relentlessly pursued former Liberal Minister Linda Reynolds and her Chief of Staff Fiona Brown. And not that it should necessarily make any difference, but it is important to point out that Japan is the world's fourth largest economy. It is one of our most important trading partners, including for its direct investment into Australia. Japanese companies have significant capacity to provide capital and resources into Australian and South Australian infrastructure and construction. Very important to us in the middle of a housing crisis. The Japanese government has provided a very dignified response. Its official cables, which have mysteriously been leaked, have constructed the message in diplomatic terms. However, Japan's former ambassador to Australia, Shingo Yamagami, has been very direct. He's quoted in The Australian as saying that the insulting comments have damaged Prime Minister Albanese's standing in Japan. And this is a direct quote from the published article from the 10th of August. He says, while Ms Takaichi is used to derogatory remarks about her body and gender from the Chinese and her political opponents, the last thing she expected was to be so casually mocked by the trusted leader of Japan's special strategic partner. It goes on, but he, that is Mr Yamagami, says the remarks showed a paucity of strategic thinking when the countries need to work more closely together to counter Chinese aggression through initiatives such as the Quad, a strategic bloc bringing together Australia, Japan, the US and India. It is a time for toiling and not for crude jokes at another's expense, he says. So, Prime Minister, he's referring to Mr Albanese, please enjoy Japan's sweet and juicy melons without thinking about a woman's anatomy and instead focus on what our two countries must do together. Ouch. That was over a week ago. I don't think Mr Yamagami is buying the denial. Journalists and commentators from Peter Credlin to Michelle Grattan are scathing. Peter Credlin, writing in The Australian, and I'll quote because these women are very experienced, particularly in Canberra and at these levels. Peter Credlin says, it's one thing to make a mistake, quite another to refuse to admit it, and character eroding to double down and insist you did nothing wrong. But that is the modus operandi of Anthony Albanese, and he is shameless. Not only was Albanese's mocking of a ceremonial gift from his Japanese counterpart ill-judged, given the concern Tokyo already has made about his closeness to Beijing, but to use clearly sexual innuendo to garner social media likes at the expense of our allies' first female leader was crass beyond belief. What staggers me is the gaslighting. He insults our intelligence, pretending that a discussion about melons and Pamela Anderson, while juggling his hands in front of his chest, is anything other than what we all know it was. It is straight out of the Daniel Andrews playbook to try to tell people that where they saw black, it was actually white they saw, that what he did, he didn't do, that what he said, he didn't say. Michelle Grattan characterises it as a trashy conversation during a low-rent podcast, and I quote, "Let's assume his gestures were innocent and he intended no double entendre. So given the leader of an important ally was involved and the controversy was also causing Takaichi embarrassment, why did he not immediately say this and apologise for any inadvertent offence?" Meanwhile, the government apparently leaked a cable from the Japanese on the matter to back its point that everything was hunky-dory with them. Then there was the uncomfortable performance of the senior Labor women, including Tanya Plibersek, Katie Gallagher and Claire O'Neill, all having to defend the Prime Minister. The Conservative media in particular were quick to make the point, what if this had been Scott Morrison? Mr Acting President, the Australian Labor Party at both state and federal level is the most performative political party in Australia, and that is not a compliment. Labor is about symbolism, stirring words and spending everyone's hard-earned money on things that are costly and poorly designed. And now, thanks to this Prime Minister, the worst in Australian history since Gough Whitlam, every nest egg that hard-working families and businesses, which have already paid tax on, are to be raided by a government which is spending so much money that it's driving up inflation and hurting every single Australian, including those on the lowest incomes. But I digress. I tried to stimulate some potential local interest in this issue for Labor when it had its national conference in Adelaide recently via Twitter. What an opportunity for Labor women in Adelaide, home of the first successful suffrage movement, to let the Prime Minister know that, quote unquote, the standard that you walk past is the standard you accept. Presumably, as I said on Twitter, taking a stand would have been a career-limiting move. In comparison, when I have been questioned over the years about things that Liberal MPs shouldn't have said, I've apologised on behalf of my party and called them out. And these are matters of the public record. Instead, the only recent commentary for South Australian women about gender issues is in relation to the comments of one of their own former party members who attended a Liberal Party meeting. Where were they when this person was harassing one of their own, the member for Hurtle Vale? This person was banned from the Legislative Council 2 years ago, but the Labor Party only sought to expel her recently. My question is this: has her membership of their party been burning a hole in their collective feminist conscience for the last 2 years? Let me say this to the sisterhood, the Liberal women who've done so much heavy lifting in this parliament and as ministers don't need part-time selective feminists to speak on their behalf. My speech on some of the achievements of women of the Marshall Liberal government can be found on the Hansard of this place on the 21st of March 2024. A long list of specific and measurable achievements in the domestic and family violence portfolio are in a media release dated 4th of May 2021, issued by South Australia's first Deputy Premier and Attorney-General, the Honourable Vicky Chapman, Carolyn Power MP in her then role as Assistant Minister for Domestic and Family Violence Prevention, and myself as Minister for Human Services. And of course, it was a Liberal government, 50 years after another Liberal government decriminalised terminations of pregnancy, who moved those particular laws out of the Criminal Code into a standalone Health Act. Actions speak louder than words. Let me do a contrast with the first term of the Malinauskas government. These are my 10 fails in the women's portfolio. Number 1, axed the Marshall government's extension of the Emergency Domestic and Family Violence Crisis Accommodation program, which we'd funded to go from 31 to 100 beds. The Marshall Liberal government provided record funding in SA for services for people experiencing domestic and family violence, and I do acknowledge that there's a lot of funding associated with the Royal Commission. Our dedicated beds were for those who are most at risk, which enabled the specialist domestic women's services to provide safer places away from the hotel system. We provided funding and approval to expand them from 31 to 100. When Labor was elected in 2022, this expansion vanished, while frontline services tell us that they are placing up to 100 families a week in hotels. And before we hear the Minister for Women or the Minister for Domestic Violence talk about ring-fenced public housing that they've used as their rebuttal to this, the public housing system and to a degree as well, the social housing system has always prioritised women escaping from domestic violence. So that is no effective change in policy at all, but those dedicated beds vanished. Similarly, based on that model, we'd also started work on developing an alternative to the horrid emergency hotel and motel accommodation based on the domestic DFV crisis program. It's been 4 years and that has not progressed in any way, and yet the template was there ready to get that going. So women and their kids would no longer need to stay in hotels where it's hard to cook. They're removed from school, often in places that aren't close to their schools or their communities. Gone. Number 3, drag the chain on agreeing to the Domestic Violence Royal Commission. Labor ignored the calls for the establishment of the Royal Commission until several murders in South Australia shocked the state into action, at least a year after advocates had called for it. They first called for it in August 2023. In November that year, there were 4 murders in 1 week, which led to them agreeing to it for, sometime later, commencement on the 1st of July 2024. Since coming to office, on my reading of it, particularly through the hundreds of pages of the Royal Commission, the Labor government has not initiated a single new DFV program until the Royal Commission reported late in its term, which I, for those who are interested in these details, urge people to compare to that media release of the 4th of May 2021. Number 4, the state government domestic and family violence strategy vanished on Peter Malinowskis's watch. The statewide strategy, which was called Committed to Safety, ended in 2022. This had been chaired by myself with attendance from the most senior public service executives on a regular basis. I didn't realise that it had vanished, Mr Acting Chair, until the Royal Commission actually said that there needed to be a strategy. So looking around for it, I stand to be corrected, but I think Labor dropped the ball on that one. Number 5, I think another thing that they axed, which was actually an initiative of a previous Labor government, was the death review roll for all domestic and family violence deaths in the Coroner's Court, which contributed to the National Intimate Partner Homicide Data Report. The lady who was responsible for that when we came to office and worked for several years is named Ms Heidi Erat. I'm sure she won't mind me naming her, but I could not find any similar position. This was an initiative of Gail Gago in the Wetherill government, a research position to review all domestic and family violence deaths, and we continued it, and it has since ceased. This is what the Royal Commission had to say. The re-establishment of a dedicated death review function where there is a context of domestic and family violence is important. The contribution of a death review function to improvements in service responses to domestic, family and sexual violence was raised with the Commission. WSA, which is Women's Safety Services South Australia, noted that the lack of a dedicated formal mechanism has left South Australia on the outer and are unable to participate in and contribute to the Australian Domestic and Family Violence Death Review Network to the extent of other jurisdictions. Their 6th fail in the women's portfolio, having made a big issue of support for coercive control behaviour legislation while in opposition, only passed laws late in 2025, very late in the piece. Broke a promise, this is number 7, to establish a gender equality bill. While in opposition, Labor supported an independent member's 2021 gender equality bill. In government, Labor backflipped and opposed the 2022 bill and then said it would develop and introduce its own model, which it hasn't. Number 8, the gender pay gap has widened under Labor after Stephen Marshall's nation-leading results. The gender pay gap, which is not measured, it is not measured locally, it is something that's done by the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, WGEA, and the ABS, fell to its narrowest under Stephen Marshall in 2021, down to 7.1%. It's now blown out to 10.1%, and South Australia has lost its title as the state with the lowest gender pay gap. And this is after having established an entire parliamentary committee. So it's all the smoke and mirrors, the symbolic nonsense. And as we all know, as economic conditions worsen, South Australian female employees are likely to be the ones who are most disadvantaged. Labor may well have done something about this one now, but they kicked down the road any debate into the potentially life-saving alcohol laws, which were recommended by the DV Royal Commission, in spite of bill having been drafted to address recommendations. These were never brought before the Parliament. And the last one is small but significant because it just goes to the sort of lack of integrity that we see from Labor. In opposition, Labor was quite critical of the Marshall government for not providing funding to an organisation called Seeds of Affinity. They went so far as to move a motion in the Parliament in 2020, including comments about criminalised women having experienced violence and abuse at significantly higher rates than the general population. However, they haven't funded it, as far as I can tell. I do monitor these media releases and I have not noted it, but again, I stand to be corrected. There are huge concerns in the community, however, on this very serious matter about whether this government will deliver on the Royal Commission findings. All those passionate speeches about the visceral nature of Labor's feelings on this issue may not result in any change. And I do note that my colleague, the Honourable Laura Henderson, has taken up the first broken promise of the new Minister for Domestic and Family Violence, having broken the commitment to develop a social work registration scheme. But I'll just return to the issue of and you know, Mr. Acting President, I wouldn't normally get so political in a speech like this, but I feel like I've been provoked by the member for Adelaide and the member for Devonport trying to politicise an issue when they should actually look in their own backyard. And I return to the issue of the apology that the Japanese Prime Minister deserves. Many Australians are embarrassed at this Australian Prime Minister and his behaviour. We do not feel that he's fit to serve, and his lack of apology speaks volumes. We want him to practice what being an adult is and apologise.